Welcome to your class. Today we are going to take a look at a very interesting topic in mathematics, okay, where we are going to learn about complex numbers, okay. So it is a hot topic on these numbers, okay, so please make sure you are in touch and make sure you will be able to understand these numbers, okay. So we are going to learn about it. The first thing is we are going to understand where these numbers come from, okay. So where complex numbers come from, and we go on and start with that, okay. So the next thing is you're going to understand the meaning of them. Okay. Okay. We are going to understand the meaning of the imaginary I. Okay. So we're going to understand what is it and what it represents. Okay. Then the other thing is you're going to understand how do we write a standard complex number. Okay. So this is what we're going to learn. This is just an introduction video. Okay. So I'm going to be introducing to you complex numbers, which is important in other engineering aspects and physics aspects. Okay. So make sure you're in touch so that you don't miss other things, and make sure you subscribe so that we can keep on giving you something like this. First, let's answer this question. Okay, where complex numbers come from? Okay, so I'm going to be explaining where they come from. Okay, so please pay attention. Okay, so if you are asked to solve an equation like this is just a quadratic equation here. So we are going to solve it and see where complex numbers come from. Okay, so let's solve it. Okay, if you want to solve it, you can just say x squared is equals to minus 1. Okay, so now the next step you're going to say x is equals to root of plus or minus minus 1. Okay, so now we have a negative number. Okay, so this in other ways we used to say it is an error. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use this as a solution. Okay, so in these terms now we're going to take this root of negative 1 and work with it. Okay, so now a root of negative 1 is going to become an I. Okay, I for imaginary. Okay, so this is where complex numbers come from. Okay, so if you solve, okay, so we can write the definition down now. Okay, it comes from a square root of a negative number. Okay, so when you are asked where does complex numbers come from, you can just say it comes from a square root of a negative number. Here we can see we had negative 1. Now we have changed it to become I. Okay, so the answer to this equation is going to become plus or minus I. Okay, so this is the answer of this one. Okay, so if you see something in a root which is negative, let's say you saw that it is minus 25 in a root, you can see that this one, okay, this one, you can say that the answer is 5i, okay, plus or minus 5i. Okay, so make sure that you remember that root minus 1 is I, and you remember that whenever you put a root here, a square root, your answer is going to become plus or minus. Okay, so this is that on where does complex numbers come from. Okay, so now try to solve this one. Okay, try to solve this one and get the answers. Okay, get the answers which contain I, and please let me know which answers did you get. Okay, now let's understand more about the imaginary I. Okay, so this is our letter I. Okay, I remember I told you that I is equals to root of negative 1. Okay, so we're going to work with this in all our workings. Okay, so this means that if you say I squared, you're going to get minus 1. And if you say I cubed, you're going to get your answer is minus root minus 1. Okay, so this is it. And if you say I to the power 4, you're going to get your answer is 1. Okay, so and so on and so on. Okay, so this is what we're going to use. Okay, so the meaning of imaginary I, we're going to, you can just answer it as I is equals to root of minus 1. Okay, so you're going to work with this one using these laws, and you're going to see how do we do it. Okay, so when a number is said to be 5i, okay, it can only add or subtract something which contains an I. Okay, you can only say 5 plus 3i is equals to something. You can get, in this case, you're going to get 8i. Okay, so it is going to work as a variable, but you know that I is equals to root of minus 1. Okay, if you see a number which is like 3 is being added to a number like 5i, please don't add this. It is a complex number like this. Okay, so let's go on and see how do we represent complex numbers. Okay, this is the representation of complex numbers. Okay, let me show you how do we represent them. So now let's talk about the representation of a complex number. Okay, so in this case, we are going to talk about the standard complex form. Okay, complex numbers can be represented by many ways. Okay, you are going to see as we go on. Okay, but now let's first learn about standard complex form. Okay, a standard complex form is like this. A complex number is represented by a plus bi. Okay, so this is the representation of a complex number. Okay, so these a and b, they are real numbers. Okay, okay, just numbers like 1, 2, 0.4, 0.45, pi. Okay, any number, okay, can take the position of a and b. But you know that I is equals to root of minus 1. Okay, so we're going to work out this. Okay, so now let's divide our number. Okay, so this number, this part which contains a, we call it the real part. Okay, this is the real part. Okay, so this is the real number like 3, 4, like I said, this. Then this time is this bi whole, this whole bi, it is an imaginary part. Okay, so this is the only thing that changed in this case. Okay, so this is the representation of a complex number. Okay, so this complex number is represented with the real part, with the real part plus an imaginary part. Okay, so make sure you remember this. And the imaginary part is seen by having an eye. Okay, so if a number like this, let's say a number is a plus bi, like this one. Okay, and another number is b plus ai. Okay, so these ones are not equal. Please make sure complex numbers, they are said to be equal if the real part is equal to the real part, and if the imaginary part is equal to the imaginary part. Okay, so this is what we represent, how we represent complex numbers in their standard form. We are going to be learning other ways of representing complex numbers, but this one is called the standard form. Okay, so please, that was that on in the introduction of complex numbers. Please make sure you're in touch because you're going to learn everything about complex numbers here. How do we deal with them? How do we find the roots and how they link to our today's world? Okay, that was that. Please see you next video. Make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss it.